on today's episode of All About Life with Danielle Brown.
And that's part of the business where you have to be like, I know what I bring to the table. If they don't respect what I'm able to do, then I'm just going to leave.
Personally, the pay does not match up with what we're doing.
The politics of the newsroom for me was the ultimate, like, this isn't where I need to be. It's not going to be fruitful.
Something people don't really view us as are people. We are still a person, regardless if you're seeing us through a television screen.
Hey friends, Amy, Morgan, Temple, welcome to All About Life. How are you guys?
We are good. I think I can speak for all of us. We're super excited to be here and ready to tackle this thing.
Oh, I'm so pumped to have y'all on the show. I think people are going to be able to tell that we're all friends, like in real life. Like we have a Snapchat group and we're like always talking and sending like funny memes to each other. So this really is going to feel and is just like a normal conversation between friends, you know?
And I think it's interesting too, because we're all now in different states. Now that Amy's moved, like we have South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, and Louisiana. I almost said New Orleans as a state. That would have been
Yeah, I was like, did you forget where I live, dog?
No, I almost said New Orleans.
I always say, you say Orleans?
It's New Orleans.
Orleans.
Yeah.
Fight me, sue me.
Well, I mean,
You're not the one that lives
saying
there.
it,
Yeah, but no, I mean, it is interesting for people who don't know. We all met in Charleston, South Carolina, and then fast forward 2 years and we're all in different cities. And we're still FaceTiming and hanging out. So
We're still friends. And while I have all of y'all here, we are talking about news, life in TV, because that's how we all met. So a little background for everyone joining us. Temple was at one station. I feel like now I can't say the actual stations. Temple was at a station. I then joined that station. Morgan and Amy were at a station. And then Morgan came over to the same station as Temple and me. And now none of us work or live in Charleston. Like Temple mentioned, we all have moved on, live in different states, but I'm the only one that actually left news. All of you guys are still chugging and crushing it and killing it. And I actually don't work in TV anymore. I get to do this. So I think to start for everyone who is new to the world of TV, because I think when you live in it and work in it, it makes sense and we get it. But a lot of people have so many questions and find it so intriguing because it is a really cool job that we get to do. But I feel like it would be a good place to start for everyone to kind of go around and introduce yourself, but really what you do, because like Morgan is off camera while the rest of us were always on cam. So I think it'll be good just to explain, like, Morgan, what does a producer do? Amy, you work weekend anchoring and you do, week reporting. So what's y'all's roles now and kind of a little background for people who don't know what the job entails? Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. So like you said, Danielle, I'm the weekend news anchor and I report during the week at my station in New Orleans. I also produce the weekend show. I don't know what else to say, actually. That's it.
well, I can start and give Amy some talking points with that as well. So basically, like Danielle said, we're on air. So it's completely different from Morgan's job. I started as a reporter in Charleston and then I anchored for a little bit before moving up to Nashville, Tennessee. And I think one thing worth mentioning that people may not understand is television comes in market sizes. So there's about 250 markets across the country, and they typically correlate with how big that city is. So for example, a small town in Idaho could be market 173, whereas when we all started Charleston, that was Charleston, South Carolina, so market 90, and then we've also all made jumps forward. So New Orleans is in 40s, Tampa is a top 10, and then Nashville is a top 30 market. So kind of news is to put in your dues, climb the ladder, keep going to bigger stations. And when you switch, your job responsibilities change a little bit too. So when I was a reporter in Charleston, it was completely different from my duties now in Nashville. I feel like this is more fast paced. I don't have a boss looking over my shoulders. day-to-day grind, something worth mentioning is probably the sleep schedule. If you guys want to talk about that, because I don't think people realize we do not sleep ever.
Yeah. I mean, the sleep schedule is probably the hardest part, especially when you're on that 3 a.m. to noon. I mean, it's unreal. And people feel like you're a zombie during the week because you're going to bed at 6, but you're like, I'm barely getting 6 hours of sleep going to bed at 6, you know? It's a lot to handle. I feel like people just kind of look at us and they think that, you know, somebody writes our scripts and then they just hand it to us and then we just go and put it on air. But that's completely not the case at all. Like, as reporters, anchors, producers, we write all of our own stuff and then we present it on air. And I think that's a really big misconception a lot of people have. They think that we're just there to be the faces, but no, we're really there to put in the work and the time.
Well, it's not even just writing. It's because I have this common misconception all the time of my shift right now is 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. So I get to the station at 2, and I just had someone ask me the other day, oh, and then are you giving your stories? Am I giving my stories? No, I have to find my stories. So going along with the sleep, I go to bed at 5 p.m. And so I get off work at 10 a.m. And then from 10 a.m. to 5, you're not off the clock. Because if I'm not working in those off hours, I'm not going to have a story for tomorrow because no one's awake at 2 a.m. So when I get in, I'm typically trying to find something new, trying to find something fresh, or I'm pulling sound from interviews that I got the day before. So say it's Monday and I'm off the clock and I know Tuesday morning we have our soccer stadium opening. So Monday night before bed, I try and get that interview, tag it. Next morning, I wake up, I log it, I write it, I present it, we go on air and do that thing. So I think it's just important to note that everything you see us doing is from us. It's not, we're getting cherry picked these stories. We're not getting spoon fed. We're writing, we're researching, we're executing. Sometimes we're going through 100 pages of a press release and condensing it to 45 seconds, which that's probably my least favorite part, but it's what we have to do. We have to take all of this complex information and make it concise and just do it in a minute. And a lot of people just don't understand that.
I think, and like you said, we're tasked with taking things that are like, can be very confusing. Like, we are going to like city council meetings, we're sitting in on all these random things, and we're taking a lot of information and talking to experts about this and then condensing it to chewable, digestible pieces of information. Because then also, I mean, even a whole package is what, a minute 30? I feel like it's been a hot minute since I've been out of it. So now I'm like checking my own self, but you have a minute and 30 seconds to relay all this information, and which is how a lot of people are getting that kind of information. I can't tell you how many times I would walk into a story, say I was going to interview someone on the school board or literally anything, and I'm walking in my flats, and because I would not wear heels ever, in your dress, your full hair and makeup done, you're carrying around 2 bags of cameras, you have to set all the mics up, you have your computer, you're the one editing. Also, don't even start talking about going to breaking news. You are like rushing, putting in, typing in scripts, you're calling the producer's calling you, you're talking through your IFB. I mean, there is a lot of work that goes into it. And I agree, a lot of people, I would come in and they'd say, where's your team? And I would be like, you're looking at her, I'm right here, I'm a one-man band over here. And they're like, wow, you do all of that? And I'm like, yes. I think working in news was the hardest job I've ever had. It also is very rewarding and fulfilling. You get to the end of the day and you're like, wow, like I just did that. I will never forget, I had one of the worst days. And I was like, if I can get through that, I can do anything. Because it's so much work. You're like, you don't have a ton of time. You're turning a lot of information. But I think people now at least have a small appreciation for what we do. But Morgan, you do something different than all of us. All the rest of us have kind of had similar roles and job expectations. But Morgan's the one behind the camera, making the show run, putting in all the good stuff. So Morgan, break down, what does a producer do, especially in a top 10 market? Wow.
Top 15, guys, not top 10. Hopefully we'll get there one day. But
are you 11?
I think we're actually 13 right now. But I think after this census, with the amount of people that are moving to Tampa, it'll be interesting to see, honestly, what we rank. But that doesn't matter.
Top 10 in my heart.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Still very impressive.
No, I appreciate that. But no, I mean, a producer, I want to say a producer does a lot. Like, and I say that as humbly as I possibly can. Like, a producer from my standpoint, like right now I'm producing the 4 p.m. newscast for the station here that I work for in Tampa. And I write all the scripts. I stack the rundown. So essentially what that means is like, I put the stories in order in which I best think that they're told, and which would be most compelling for my audience during that hour of news, because your demographic from the 4 p.m. newscast to the 5 p.m. newscast to the 6 p.m. newscast, even to the 7 p.m. newscast, is completely different. So it's something like digesting what my demographic is, how to best tell those stories in the way that I can tell them that would resonate with my audience the most. And then I also build, all the graphics. So like we call them lower thirds or supers, the things at the bottom of the screen that just kind of tell the story. We build those too. All the maps you see, all the over the shoulder graphics, OTSs, we build all those. So producers do a lot, and I mean that in the nicest way, but I mean the newsroom is such a team environment because we don't write the reporter stuff, the reporters do all of their stuff. But we couldn't have a newscast without our reporters. We couldn't have a newscast without our anchors. We couldn't have our newscast without our managers, directors, production assistant, digital team. Like there's so many things that go into a newsroom that people will never understand how it works behind the scenes until they see it and they're in it, especially in breaking news, the chaos, the adrenaline, because I love breaking news. I think you do have to have a passion for that adrenaline, when it is breaking news. If you don't, you'll get burnt out so easily in this business. So yeah, producers we write all day. At the end of the day, we write all day and we build graphics.
I think being a producer, it's, when there is breaking news, it is very chaotic because you've been working all day on this show, all day, 8 hours. And then breaking news happens, 3:58, you've got to put it in the show. Your show is completely different. And I think, breaking news, you definitely have to have a passion for it, but it can definitely completely alter your day at the very last second.
Absolutely. I mean, and changing a rundown is so hard and so significant because you have to work with so many people to make it come to life. It's not like I'm just like, okay, I want to take Amy live. You can't just do that. It's something where you have to build, the anchors have to toss to her. You have to build the boxes that are with it. Like there's so many aspects to breaking news where people are like, why haven't they reported on it yet? Where are they at? There's so many steps to getting something on air that it's like, it's not just a snap of the finger. And I think that's where it's a little misconstrued, like with our business into real life, is they just expect it to happen. Well, there's got to be a process to make that happen. And so I think that's something that maybe reality or like outside like wouldn't fully understand.
And you also
just the timing too. I mean, people don't understand. We have different blocks in a show, A block, B block, C block, and between all of these are commercial breaks. You have to hit a specific time. You have to be in and out of commercial break at a specific time, or else all your viewership for that 7-10 minutes is washed if you're not hitting where the click point is supposed to be. So it's not like you can just stretch your first part of your show from 7 minutes to 11, because then you're not going to get the credit for it. Like producers have such a hard job of hitting the times exactly like they need to. And just to say, like, well, Morgan's producing something called a booth, and Amy and I are in the field. So that constant communication has to be happening. And I don't know if people know this. I mean, I feel like this is more common knowledge, but reporters always have something in their ear so they can talk back to the producers, especially during breaking news. And that's when we figure out exactly what we're doing. Or, hey, you've been moved. I'm going to move you another minute. Get ready, stand by. It gets very chaotic, and the producers have a lot on their shoulders with that because they have to communicate with the reporters, the anchors, the directors, the editors getting new video in. And it happens like this.
And I also, they're like, y'all are not only just like producing the rundown, putting in the boxes, all the lower thirds and all that stuff, but like when breaking news happens, they're also the people that are calling the PIOs, calling police, making sure something actually happened. And that's like another reason that I think sometimes people are like, why isn't this on air yet? Like, I'm looking at it right now. Well, we can't report on something until it's been confirmed, and our producer isn't going to put something on air until it's confirmed, because well, what if it's not what it looks like,
And I think also is like at my station in Charleston, obviously that was a much smaller station. So, we had a lot more responsibilities as a producer there. Tampa, it's amazing because we do have a bit more people that work in the newsroom. So our responsibilities aren't as heavy. But like in Charleston, say breaking news is happening, I'm also running the teleprompter. So while I'm trying to communicate with my reporters, to my anchors, to my directors, all this, I'm still trying to control this little knob, to where my anchors know what they're reading so they don't look silly on air. Because at the end of the day, if my reporters or anchors look silly on air, it comes down on me, and we take a lot of heat for that. And I love that. I love that aspect of the job. And I understand the frustration coming from on air talent. I will always understand it because it is your face. People will never see my face. People don't know that I exist. They just expect it, to come to life. But, when you're running prompter and you're having to deal with all that stuff, to me, it should be not allowed. Like, I think like at the end of the day, like that should never be a thing. But that's the grind of this business. It's the hustle, it's the bustle. That's what we love. And we had to work. Now I will never touch prompter here in Tampa. You see what I'm saying? So we work hard and we do all that in the smaller market to get where we are now. So
I had no idea that you ran the teleprompter too. That's hard. That's really hard, especially when you're doing other stuff. And then it's like you're trying to keep up with the pace of the anchors or the reporters or anything like that. Teleprompter to me, like it is such a tedious job, but it is so necessary. And so I feel like you need somebody on it at all times. I did not know that you were doing the prompter too.
And I think that's a hit that the business had during the pandemic was, we had all these production assistants, PAs is what they're called sometimes. And I think at the station, and I worked at 2 stations in Charleston. The first one, we had PAs that, worked the prompter for us, but my second station, we didn't. And a bunch of layoffs happened during the pandemic with news saying, these roles aren't as vital. We can make someone else do it, aka the producers or the reporters taking on extra jobs, and that was something that it was a huge adjustment too. I think the pandemic has really impacted this business. And I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit later. I don't know if I want to jump into that, but yeah, so it's a grind. At the end of the day, TV is hard. It's not easy, but we love it. And that's why we continue to do it.
Yeah, I want to talk about why we love it, or for me, loved it. But I do have a funny now story. I was reporting in studio. So if you're live, you can report out in the field, which is you're out in the city, you're outside, or you report in studio, which that one's obvious. So I'm reporting live in studio. Our producer controls the prompter. So if you're in studio, what you're reading off of, your script is on a prompter, and I have no control over it. And so I'm like standing there, anchors tossed to me, I start reading, the prompter it scrolls. My whole script scrolls to the bottom to my tag, which the tag is like to end the script. And so I'm like, literally I start talking, and then it got to I had memorized, I knew my intro and stuff, but the whole meat and potatoes of my script, I didn't have memorized. So I say my intro and I just stood there, and I'm standing there literally live on air like this.
Was I your producer then? Was that on me?
No, it was not Morgan. I was, I don't want to say the show.
I didn't know, because I remember that something very similar happened to me, because what happens is, from a producer standpoint, when you scroll through, it's because, we take them live in the field. Obviously they're not reading a prompter in the field.
That's exactly what, it was a morning producer. She was in my ear. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were in the field. And because it's true, everyone has so much going on. And it is, like you said, such a team sport, if you will. We all need each other. So the anchors are 2 feet away, looking at me what are you doing? They can see the script is all the way at the bottom. Then she scrolls it back up. So then I start talking after standing there for a solid probably 30 seconds, which felt long to me.
Feels so long.
It does. I'm standing there, and then, but to your point, I'm the one who everyone sees mess up. So nobody knows that the producer scrolled through my script and I couldn't do anything about it. Everyone's just wow, she's just awkwardly standing there. I can laugh about it now. And I was it's no big deal. And she was very apologetic that those kind of things happen. But I do want to talk about why we do this, because this job is hard. Your sleep schedule is wild. It's hard to have a social life because nobody really understands what it's like to be in this business unless you're in this business, which I will say, when we were all in Charleston, we were very blessed because I feel like our core group of friends all were from TV. And so we kind of knew each other's schedules and what to expect. But for each of you guys, what got you into journalism? What was the passion to get there? And then why are you still in it? I can't say that because I'm not in it anymore, but I can speak to why I did. And I can even speak to why I left, because burnout, Maureen, you mentioned this, is so real in this industry. There is such a high turnover rate. And I can speak to that because I'm the one who I never thought I would leave TV. It was my passion. I was good at it. I was like, I'm going to make it. And what does make it look like in this industry? Different for everyone also. So let's start with the positive. What got you guys into journalism? Why did you want to get into the business?
So I can start with this one. Just a little background about me. I'm the youngest of 5. My family is so competitive with each other. We grew up playing sports. And I think like many people, when you're a little girl, you want to be Erin Andrews, you want to be Sam Ponder, you want to be Holly Rowe, all of these people. So of course, growing up, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a sideline reporter. My dad was a sports photographer, so he was always on the sidelines. And I was like, that would be so cool to just be working alongside my dad. And then I think as you grow up, we go to college, we do these internships, we make a ton of sacrifices because the grind starts way before you get into the workforce. Because if you wanted a job, you had to do these internships, you had to give up some of the fun times of college. I mean, I spent every summer away in a different city doing a different internship, learning as much as I could. And then it got me my jobs. It got me exactly where I wanted to be. But I think as you grow up, your mentality changes a little bit. I still love sports. I love watching sports. Sports makes me happy. But the aspect of news that I really enjoyed was the fact that I think I have a purpose in it. So if something is happening in your neighborhood, you turn on your local news station and we're the people telling you what's happened. I'm driven by helping people. I love the community. And it just gives you a sense of purpose of, holy smokes, I got this story. I just kept someone safe. And it's a whole team effort, like Morgan said, but it really just goes back to when you're in this community, you want to serve it, you want to make people happy, you want to just have that sense of, wow, look at all of these ties, we're all coming together. So for me, it's just more of like the teamwork, the effort. I love the hustle. I love everyone working together for that common goal. And I think we can transition this conversation a little bit further once we start talking about some of the negatives, because as an industry, I think we're losing a little bit of those aspects. I think it's changing and it's not as feel good and homey as it once was. And that part saddens me a little bit. And I think that relates to burnout. But as for why I got into it, it was just the sense that I wanted to be able to help people. And being a journalist lets you do that. It's definitely different now, the past 2 years, with fake news emerging and the climates we live in, and we're not really looked at as a trusted source anymore, and people have lost a lot of journalistic integrity. So I think for all of us, that probably hurts, because that's not why we got into this industry. You have to have some sort of a servant's heart to be able to do what we do, because no one wants to wake up at 1 a.m. No one wants to go to bed at 5 p.m. I still don't have a social life. You're making these sacrifices. And I think it's going to be interesting as we continue this conversation and talk about, what are those sacrifices for? What's your goal? Where does this really feed into in the long run? But Morgan, why did you get started?
So mine's actually a pretty wild story how I got in this business. Just to cut it dry, I mean, I was literally, and still am, I'm a massive Ellen fan, and it's insane how, I know we all laugh, but that is literally how I got in this business. And it's
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because I mean, and Ellen, I'm referring to Ellen DeGeneres, like she has been someone that I've always looked up to. I love her heart. And obviously, these past few years for her too have been pretty hard in regards to her character and who she is. But I did meet Ellen, and just from like those 15-20 minutes that I did have with her, it was just one of the kindest moments. She took time out of her day to speak to me. So I'll just leave it like that. But so I always want to have my
Sorry, no, pause. She didn't meet Ellen.
I was about to say
the Ellen show.
Interrupt. You were literally on the show. I got to meet Ellen.
But
Like
it
ran
wasn't.
into her like on the street.
Yeah,
No,
I ran into her at a Starbucks. No.
No, I mean, I was on her show, but that's because how crazy I am. I was literally named her like biggest college fan. That's a whole other story that we will definitely not get into today. But yeah, so I wanted to have my own talk show like her, and essentially, I just wanted to go into the media field after I had decided that at 11 years old, and that's something that I was really grateful for. That I knew what business I wanted to be in at such a young age. Especially playing softball my whole life, I did go kind of through an identity crisis, once I got off the ball field, but I was able to find that passion quickly off the ball field, which can be really, really hard for athletes after college. But so yeah, essentially I wanted to do that. And then I got an internship, like Temple just talked about, how you really grind during your years and during your summers of college. I got an internship at a local station back in like near Virginia Beach. That's where I'm from, is Virginia Beach area. And I interned there. I tried reporting first. I really did. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a reporter, all this. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I got there. It was awful. The makeup, the hair, the being on, I could not do it. I knew that wasn't for me. I said, absolutely not. I literally did one day of reporting, like shadowing a reporter, and I knew that was not my calling. So then I was like, okay, well, I got to try something else. So I went to producing and I shadowed their midday producer, and she changed my whole life. And I've told her that many times. She really introduced me to an outlet that I knew that's where I was supposed to be. I knew that's where I was supposed to be a producer. And yeah, so it started there. After that internship, I did a few more, and I said, all right, producing it is. So that's it. Amy, go ahead.
I feel like mine is like a very like unconventional way of how I got into it. I was a biomed major at my university, and then I just simply could not pass chemistry. Like I wanted to be a doctor just like my dad so badly, but I could not pass chemistry. And so I remember one day I just called my mom and I said, "Take a look at the majors, just pick one." And she said, "Okay, what about broadcast journalism? You can talk to people." So I said, okay. So the next day I went and I changed my major to broadcast journalism. And it ended up being like the biggest blessing, honestly, because I met like all these amazing people. I fell in love with news. I ended up being the president of our broadcast club. I don't know why they trusted me. Where's
We
Temple?
lost Temple.
She just hated my story that much. I mean,
I know. She probably will hop back on. Finish your
Yeah.
story, Amy, though, because I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
I had no idea that you were a biomed and then randomly chose broadcast journalism.
It wasn't even my choice. It was just what my mom said to do. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was my end of sophomore year of college. And so then junior year is when I started all my journalism classes. And like I said, it was like a huge blessing that I got to do that. And I don't know, for whatever reason, like I said, I was the president of the broadcast club, which was really neat. And then, I did go and do my internship. I gave up my last semester of school to go home and do my internship over at the news station in my hometown. And that was pretty hard because, it's your last semester with all your friends from college, all your sorority sisters, all the people you've met. And I wasn't there for anything. I had to leave my sorority like 6 months early. I didn't get to do a lot of stuff that a lot of seniors got to do. So that was hard, but it was very well worth it because at that internship, that's where I learned everything. That's how I know what I'm doing today. I would say it's where I learned the most, and it's where my passion for news started to grow. So then I started there and I interned there for reporting. Then like the last week, I was like, I think I want to be a digital producer. So then they hired me as a regular producer / digital producer. And I also did the sideline sports reporting. And then after about 2 years of doing that, I was like, I think I'm going to get out of the business. I'm going to do something else just because it is so hard. It is such a burnout. You like constantly have to be on it. You can't be wrong about anything. That's another huge thing. You cannot be wrong about anything. You're at risk all the time of getting sued if you get anything wrong. And it's very stressful. And so I got out of the business for about 3 months, but then there's just something so addictive about being in news, telling people stories, letting people know what's going on, helping people out, like how Temple said. It really drives me every day. I know that I'm making a difference in letting these people know what's going on, helping them out, or even just alerting them of some breaking news, like, hey, don't go in this area, there was just a shooting, or hey, there was a car wreck on this interstate, don't go there, it's going to be massively backed up. It's little things that I don't think people actually think about. But to me, like when I'm telling someone what's going on, I feel like I'm making a difference, I'm helping them out. Like how Temple said, like you have a purpose. And I just think it's so incredible that we do have a job that is so rewarding like that.
And I do want to touch on something really quick on what Amy said. And I think I can speak for all four of us, including Danielle, when she was in journalism. There's a lot of journalists out there that claim to be journalists and they're not. They report on what they hear, or, they have nothing official. And I know that I can speak for all four of us. We report facts, and that's that. And that's something that we are proud about. That's something that we will always hold ourselves accountable for. And it is hard. It is hard to maintain that, especially on, controversial topics where you definitely have an opinion on. But at the end of the day, I know that I can say that we are factual journalists that do not provide our opinion in pieces. We report what the officials are saying. And if the viewer doesn't agree with what the officials are saying, or they think that it's wrong that the officials are saying it, guess what? We got to report what the officials say. And if you have a problem with that, then you take that up with the officials. We are just reporting what the officials say. So I think that's also an aspect of journalism where I think I can definitely speak for all of us that we're
yeah. I think local news, people don't realize, we may say ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, but local news stations, all of us are completely unbiased. We're not supposed to have our opinions in anything. So when somebody comes up to me and they say, oh, I hate that network. Okay, well, you might hate that network because they have a different opinion than you, but this is the local news. We don't have opinions on things. We're not allowed to do that. If I had an opinion on half of my stories, I would be fired in a week, and it's disappointing to me sometimes when people come up and they say like not the nicest things just because we work for a news station. Well, I'm out here trying to help you. I'm not trying to cause any drama or anything like that. And I don't know, I think people have a misconception that just because our call letters or our network is the same as something else, that we are like that station. That's not the case.
I would hear it all the time. Like, oh, I don't watch the news, or I don't trust the news, or this network is super biased this way, or this network leans this way. And then, but they would talk and say that about a local station without ever, and I'm like, but you just said you don't watch the news. And so even out of news now, I said this when I worked in news, I say it even now, I'm like, I worked there. I pride myself in like, we relay the facts, we go to the source, we go to the experts, we report on that. Like, we're not allowed to have an opinion on the issue. We, present both sides equally and unbiasedly. Like, we worked with someone who we love dearly that sometimes did have a bias, and that was like cut off. Like, you can't in our job be unfair to one another. I did hear, maybe this was in news, like if you have people mad at you from both sides, say it was politics, like we all covered the whole, like whenever everyone was like voting and everything, like we all have covered elections. And I did a story one time, got so much flack for it. And someone that I had looked up to in the industry was like, you know what though? You're getting hate from both sides, which means you did your job. Like if both people are mad, that means you reported fairly on everyone, and you can't make everyone happy. Everyone says that. And it is hard when you're like, I just spent my whole work day trying to, get you this information. And now you're like, oh, I don't trust you. I don't believe you. Like, oh, well, you're welcome. What were you gonna say, Temple?
I was
Well, I think that mistrust comes from a good place. Like, I don't think the general public wants to hate the media. I think it's now coming from, we have people who just blow up Twitter, blow up Facebook, don't get the facts, don't get the research, and they tweet out whatever they can to make it as politically charged as possible. And these are the tweets getting hundreds of thousands of retweets and favorites. And we sit back as journalists knowing good and well that that is not an honest tweet, that that does not even make sense. But people just get so radicalized now because it's more about proving your point rather than getting to the source of the information. And something else I want to touch on, Amy brought it up. So we aren't hired by ABC or Fox or NBC. They just have these partnerships with us because they need us to fill content on their stations. So I'm with a Fox affiliate now, and the amount of people who call me and ask me for Tommy Laren's phone number, I don't have it. I don't have it. I don't know her. I have no idea. But what we do is Fox has 5 hours that they have to fill. They don't have any television shows to play. They don't have any national news. So what do? They find a local station in Nashville, Tennessee, and they say, hey, do you guys want to fill these 5 hours with local news? NBC does it and says, hey, we have 2 hours if you guys want to fill it. We are not hired by them, we are not employed by them, and we are not paid by them. We just happen to be on their station. We have zero affiliation with whatever agendas you may think someone is pushing or whatever news they're relaying as soon as our show is over. We don't have their phone numbers. We can't talk to them. It is just so frustrating because people will come by me every morning. It never fails. Oh, F you, I hate Fox News. I'm like, that's fantastic. You should go tell them because I can't, because I don't work for Fox News. So it's just like one of the headaches of people not understanding the extent of what we do, why we do it, or how we do it. And it's just the littlest things like that, that if people did a little bit of research, which is kind of the point of journalism, then they would understand, oh, okay, maybe I'm saying something that isn't well researched or isn't based in fact. Maybe I'm being a little silly. But no one does that anymore because we all just go to Twitter and we just read whatever we want to read. And it's insane. And I could go off on this. So I'm going to need someone else though.
No, Danielle's got more questions.
I do have more questions, so I'll intervene. I guess y'all all shared why y'all got into journalism, and I didn't. I can skip that question. So I'll go back. I'm similar to Temple, where I had a passion for sports and grew up watching sports and football, and I was a big Carolina Panther football fan. And I found something that I was good at, and I had a natural talent for speaking, something that I could work really hard at, that I would be passionate about. And I think the biggest thing for me is I always wanted a platform to tell people about Jesus, knowing that wasn't going to go through work, but working in TV, people do know you or recognize you. And I was like, that can open opportunities for me to tell people about Jesus. And then I got into news, and that was like, absolutely not. You will never do that. So one of the reasons I had to get out, but got into it, went to school. I mean, from high school early, I was like, I'm going to be a sportscaster. And then went to college, did it. Everyone's telling me like, oh, I remember someone's like, you'll start in a news station, or they were telling our college class, but half of y'all won't make it, or 75% of you will leave after 2 years. And I was like, not me. I'm making it all the way. This is my whole life. And then I was in the industry for 3 years and I left. And if you would have told me that, I would have been like, absolutely no way. And now I work in cybersecurity. Very different, like my full time outside of my passion project, if you will. I now work in cybersecurity. Very different, two worlds. And I think being in journalism, especially if you are on air, you can kind of be put into this category of, oh, you're pretty, you want to be on camera so people look at you and you like the attention. And that's like the furthest thing from the truth. But we have to be honest in that there definitely is bias in that. Like, we worked for a station that really would only hire attractive people. Like, it is true that the industry, if you're watching and TV, they want someone on TV who looks a certain way. And I think that also goes into some of the negative, because I completely agree with why I was passionate about what I was doing. I was telling stories that to this day, I'm still super inspired by, like Sydney Fowler, my girl. She was a freshman who I got to do a story on and had a staph infection and became paralyzed. And her family are amazing. Telling that story literally changed my life. And that's not the only one. Feeling like you were an advocate for the community, feeling like you had change. I did a story on a community and they needed an elevator fix because it was an elder senior community. They literally couldn't leave. Right after we did a story on them, the elevator was fixed and they were like, thank you, thank you, thank you. So feeling like you actually really can make a difference and speak up for people who might not be able to or have the means to, completely worth the hard things about this job. And I think this is something I'm passionate about. So maybe I'll ramble and somebody needs to stop me. But there are like really hard parts of the job, like being told how to dress, being told how to wear your makeup. Those were never issues I had, but I was told when I needed to cut my hair. Like I wanted long hair for the summer and I was told I had to get it cut. And I knew it. I knew that was going to come, and people are so surprised. I would still get like, oh my gosh, so you would go in every morning and have your hair and makeup done? Absolutely not. I am the makeup artist. No one ever did our makeup. We had to dress ourselves. We didn't get, at least I didn't, like get an allowance to go and buy clothes to wear on camera because you're expected to wear a certain thing. And that's also different than like what Morgan does, because producers can show up in sweatpants and a sweatshirt and nobody cares, which is like a pro of her job. But that was one of the hard things, and there's many more. People ask me if I would ever get back into TV. And my immediate reaction is like, no, I would not, because it's so demanding. And now seeing what a healthy work relationship and work environment is, I don't know if I could ever put myself back into that, no matter how passionate I was. But I think that's also different based on what station you go to and where you work and the market. If you get into a higher market, like your responsibilities aren't always the same. But I think that's worth talking about. What about you guys? Some of the negatives of the job, if we're keeping it real, like, hey, we already know why we're passionate. All of y'all are sticking through it and you love it. And y'all are so, I hope everyone listening and joining knows, like, we're talking to the creme de la creme of TV right here. Like, these gals really know what it's about. So I hope everyone really can trust what's happening here, because this is high tier quality talent. But what are some of the hard things that y'all have faced keeping it real? That's like, yeah, this part of the job, not my favorite.
Well, I think, like you said, Danielle, it's a very demanding job. You see a lot of things you don't want to necessarily see. You go to a lot of scenes that are very, honestly, for lack of a better term, traumatizing at points. And we're doing all this, working all day, pretty much every day, because when you work in news, you're pretty much on call 24/7. If there's something major that happens, they're going to call you in. Whenever there was that Christmas Day bombing in Nashville, they called Temple in. She had to drive from Indiana to Nashville. But something that I think a lot of people don't realize is we don't make a lot of money doing this. People think that we make bank. I was making minimum wage at a full-time job, and I couldn't afford anything at all. I had to live at home for my first job. For my second job, all the money I had saved from living at home went to my rent. It got to the point where I couldn't pay my rent anymore. My parents had to step in. Now I'm in my third news job and I'm finally making, a fine amount. I call it normal people money. I'm finally making normal people money, which, it's not, for everything that we do, for every scene that we go to, for all the hours we put in, it's just, to me personally, the pay does not match up with what we're doing. And, like I said, I think people think that we're rich because we're on TV. It's simply not the case. I pay for my own hair. I pay for my own makeup. I pay for my own clothes. And it's just it's a bad misconception that there is. But even though we don't make a lot and don't make what I think we should make necessarily, I would still say it's still worth it in the end. Just because this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be.
And I think people are stunned, and just for the sake of transparency, I don't care to share my first salary, my first news job. And Danielle, we worked at the same station. Morgan, you came to our station later. Amy, same market. I think we were all $28,000 to $30,000. Like that's
So
what we were
sad.
living off.
Like people are still shocked. Like they'll be like,
I'm getting shaky thinking
That's
of
$14 an hour.
it's
And we're
so
doing a
bad.
full-time job. And the thing about it is though, we're not working 40-hour weeks. We're working 60. We're working 60, 80-hour weeks. We're not really getting paid for it. But I think at that point, you're young, you're energetic, you want to help, you have these stories that are interesting to you and other people. So you are willing to make what I would call a sacrifice. But just as you get older and you kind of find yourself as a person and you start to develop, I think that's why people leave the industry and why that burnout exists. Because when you get married and when you want to start having a family, you can't work 60 hours a week, get paid for 40, and take home $800 bi-weekly. You just can't do it. That can't support people. And the industry as a whole, it's something they have to take a look at. I've spoken with my bosses. What are we doing? How do we focus on retention? Oh, well, maybe the focus is on recruitment. Well, how do we recruit people who stay? And it's just tough conversations that the industry is facing as a whole. And it's been pretty messed up for years because all of our internships were unpaid too. And when you look at it, I mean, we can't ignore the lack of, or the privilege that we have right now. Look at us. We're all white. We're all female. We're all not unfortunate looking, like Danielle said earlier. But people aren't given these same opportunities. I was able to do an unpaid internship in college because my parents let me do that. We had the means to do that. Not everyone can do that. Not every demographic, not every minority can work 3 months in the summer and not get paid. And then they're 5 steps behind me because I was able to do an internship and not get paid. It's not fair. You don't get the pool of people. You're missing a whole pool of talent because we're not paying people. Because maybe some people can't work for $30,000. Maybe some people's parents can't help them pay rent. Maybe some people haven't been able to save. Maybe they have to pay for their brothers and sisters' food. It is just a ridiculous system right now because we're missing the opportunity to hear so many different perspectives because people can't afford to do this job and they have voices that are just being silenced right now because you can't live on $30,000 a year.
And that's why a lot of people get out of news too, is it just doesn't pay unless you're in a top market, a top producer or a top anchor or a top reporter. And it takes a lot of time to get there. And, you know, I personally don't want to be living off of minimum wage when I'm 30 years old. I can't imagine what that's probably like. And like I said, that's why a lot of people get out after, you know, you said 2 years is when 75% of people get out, according to your professor. It's very true. It's very true because when you are in those lower markets too, you know, Temple, you said 28,000 to 30,000. That's Charleston, South Carolina. That's market 90-ish. That's a pretty good size. But when you're in like market 190, you're probably making 20,000, you know?
Well,
It's
go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
No, but it just like, and for instance, like during my internship, I had an anchor tell me like, be prepared for the pay. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Like, I understand. Like, that is what I'm signing up for. That wasn't a shock to us when we got into the industry. And I want to make that known. Like, the industry has never paid, ever paid. And like, when I spoke to that anchor, he said that he made 22,000 when he, and like, when I spoke to him, he was roughly like 55, 56 or something like that. He made 22,000, you know, when he was 21, 22. We are making, think about how different the economy has changed so much since he had become 21 to 55. And we are only making at that time $6,000 to $8,000 more than what he was making 30 plus years ago. You know, and that's only how much the industry has increased. So I think like Temple said, there's got to be a lot of change in this industry if they want retention. Especially because there are so many other jobs that we can go get, have a better work-life balance, have more money, more vacation days, better benefits, more sick leave. Like there are so many things that we can go and get. And now you may ask, why don't you do it? Because we enjoy journalism and like our passion is there and we want to tell the stories. We want to make an impact on our community. And we know that we can be that reliable source for our audience. But there are tough decisions that you have to make. And at the end of the day, if my life would be better outside of this business, I have to do what's going to be, best for, my future family, my future husband, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's something, Danielle, that you can speak on.
Yeah.
Because I think that also was a contributing factor to you leaving, because the work-life balance in our business just isn't there.
Yeah.
And a lot of my anchors, especially in this market size that I'm in now, none of them have kids. Like they're older, they don't have kids, or they have one kid, or they're like in their mid 30s where they're just waiting for their contract to end now and they have kids and they're like, okay, I'm going to leave after this. And don't get me started on contracts, because that's a whole nother ball game. But
I cannot even talk about the contracts. I am so uninterested in that. I have nothing to say. Just know that when you sign it, you're signing your life away for 2 years. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Three. I'm a
3 year.
3-year contract. I had to sign it 3 years. So think how much your life changes from the age of 24 to 27. And Danielle, I know you can speak on that, like with how much your life changes within those 3 years. Yes, you can buy out. Yeah, you can do all that stuff. But trust me, the buyout isn't.
The buyout it's more than what you make in like 2 months. You can't afford to buy out because you don't make the money to buy out.
Preach, Amy. Okay, I will speak as the person who has left journalism. Please remember, I came into this, I was going to be in this for the long run. Like Temple said, I was the next Erin Andrews. Like I was willing to put in the work. Everyone warns you of that. Be willing to grind, put in the time. Like that rhymed and I didn't mean it to, and that was pretty good. Wow. But like we're all prepared for that. And I think that is also a fail in the industry of pay your dues. Pay your dues. There is so much work that we put in and so much sacrifice, and you get nothing back. You have to be 20 years into your career. Most people are like, yay, I'm about to retire. And newsies, if you will, are finally like, oh, now I'm the anchor. Now I make a livable wage. Now my hours are somewhat okay because now I can get off on Christmas and Thanksgiving because now the new 20-somethings have to do that. Let's not talk about that we all miss holidays. Temple had to leave her family to work on Christmas. The first Christmas I worked away from my family was very hard because like I'm very family oriented. We all went to be with family on those big occasions. I was like in a back room by myself crying because I was sad. And you know what happened? I got in trouble because the manager that was on duty went and told the news director that I was like complaining. And then I went in and had this conversation of, so I heard what happened on Christmas. And I was like, that I was sad. Like I did my job. I did a good job. Like I was there all day. I just was sad, crying by myself. And my now husband was like, now you learned you can't cry at work. And I'm like, am I not allowed to be a person, like a human for 1 second? And then I got in trouble because I cried.
Dude, I have cried so many times at work. I cannot even believe you got in trouble. My first year as a reporter, I'm not kidding. I worked every single holiday. I worked Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Easter, 4th of July, Memorial Day, like every single holiday I worked. And then the next year when I said, I want off Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I worked them all last year. That was a struggle to get those days off and, pay your dues. I think we're constantly paying our dues, like consistently every single year. I'm fully aware this year, I am not going to have off any holidays. It stinks. You want to be with your family. You want to celebrate with them. And even if you do have off, Temple had off. She had to come in for breaking news. That's what I'm saying. You're on call 24/7. If they call you and say, come in, you basically need to come in. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem down the line. And you don't even want to fool with that.
I have a story to go with that. I was at home for a weekend and like out of state at home visiting family for a weekend. There was a press conference happening with the governor related to COVID. It was like the beginning of all of that. And I get a call from my boss, was like, hey, can you cover this press conference in Columbia? And I was like, I'm actually out of town with family this weekend. I'm not, local. And then she said, oh, well. And the response was, so can you be there? And I was like, yep, I'll be there. And I remember hanging up, bawling, went to my mom, like, I don't want to do this. And it all ends up being fine. And again, it's not that we don't take privilege and that we get to be in that room, hearing the governor. It's not that we don't have the highest honor of relaying that information to viewers, but we're also human and you want to be with family. You need time off. You don't get paid what you should to even enjoy the life. And I can speak to now working. I love the company I work for. I love my job. I work in cybersecurity sales. I have unlimited PTO, unlimited. I can call in and say, I need a day. My manager's like, okay, cool. You're trusted to do your job. You work hard. There is room for growth. I've been at my job for a year and we're already talking promotions, like moving up with increases in salary. I already make way more than I did. And I'm still at like the entry level position for my career. And I'm already making way more than I did working in news. The biggest life change for me was I got engaged. So I was getting married, and you can see that I'm now married, but I was getting engaged. We were getting married. We were talking buying a home, starting our life, like what that looks like. Him and I were talking about our careers, and he was so supportive. He's like, I'll move wherever you need to, because that's another thing. Working in news, you'll probably move to go up in markets every 2 to 3 or so ish when you're young years. You're going to be moving. It's not like you're stable in one place forever. It's not like you can plant roots. Not anymore. I work remote. I work from home every day. I can move tomorrow and I would still have my job. It's just like such an eye opener to see the difference in like what TV offered for life, I think, versus, a better work-life balance. I don't know. For you guys looking ahead and planning, is that something that's hard where you're like, I'm so passionate and I love what I do, but it's hard to think about the future? Because I know it was for me. Leaving TV was a very difficult decision. I also left under like not so great circumstances where they talk about paying your dues and working your way up. Well, I had a job and promotion when news taken right out from under me because there was foul play involved. And when you're kind of dealing with that, like I left not because the job was hard, not because you worked all the time, not because I was getting dinner with friends and saw that a protest was starting, knew that I was going to get called into work. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, got called into work, knowing like everyone's still sitting eating dinner and I had to leave, knowing that you're going to have to give that up. That's not why I left. The worst part is like, what's the word for it? Like how it operates, if you will, like the politics of the newsroom for me was the ultimate, like, this isn't where I need to be. It's not going to be fruitful for my career or my marriage. So I don't know. What's y'all's guys' take on that?
I think that's where like, my religion comes in. I follow God really heavily. I listen to him and everything and his guidance he has for me. And this business is something that I've really prayed about. It's a really, really hard business to be in mentally, and spiritually. As a producer, reporters, they report on one story all day. Producers were covering multiple stories. And we're reporting on a bunch of stories, a bunch of homicides, kidnappings, murders, all this like gang related stuff. And, and that weighs on you. It really, really does, especially in Florida. These people are crazy. And I mean, that in the nice way. Like these people have
That's
no
weird.
remorse. They have no remorse for their actions here. And that's something that's been a really hard adjustment here because you become, the best word is numb. You become so numb and desensitized to the awful things that are happening in this world. I don't know how to answer that question for the future of the business. But all I'm doing is trusting God through this entire process. And my next move will be based on like where he's calling me to be. And there may be other factors after this contract is up or maybe in the middle of this contract that'll contribute to my decisions, so we'll see what happens. Don't do that. So we'll see what God has for me. So that's kind of how I judge my future.
I think when I think of the future, I don't know what else I would do. I genuinely have no clue what I would do if I wasn't in news. Because when I did take that break for about 3 months, I was applying to other jobs and I was getting offers at other jobs, but nothing felt right. And to me, news does feel right. But I mean, my ultimate goal is to become a main anchor somewhere, get a 9 to 6 job, which in news, it's more like 9 to 6 or 9 to 7. A lot of people are like 9 to 5. Oh no, not news. We are 9 to 6, 7, whatever time the newscast ends. But I think that's my main goal, is to be a main anchor somewhere with a relatively normal schedule. But that takes a lot of time. And you have to be so patient to get to that point. So,
and also I want to speak to that too. Favoritism plays a part in this business. Like there is favoritism shown. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter who you are as a journalist. I'm speaking from 3 different stations that I've been at. And I don't think it's shown as heavily in Tampa where I am now, but I've obviously only been there a few months. But I can speak on the last 2. There is favoritism shown, period. A person could be more talented and they won't get the job. And that's part of the business where you have to be like, I know what I bring to the table. If they don't respect what I'm able to do, then I'm just going to leave. Because there's jobs open in this business everywhere. Literally, you name the city, you name the affiliate, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. There's that position. So, I think that is also very important to put in there is favoritism on and off air talent. It does not matter. Because at the end of the day, the news director, assistant news director, and EPs, executive producers, have the final say. It doesn't matter what you feel or how you feel. It doesn't matter. And I guess that goes with every business, but in news specifically, like if the news director doesn't like you, you'll know, and that's that.
Mm-hmm. And you don't get a say. Morgan, I like what you touched on, like your first answer of planning for the future, because we're all here following Jesus, and it can be a very difficult job to work in as a Christian. So to wrap up our conversation today, let's get real about being a Christian and following Jesus and working in this industry, whether it's really hard because we're talking about murders and death and fires and really hard things every day, or also like not putting in your personal views and not swaying when you're delivering or writing a story because you have to be non-biased, which sometimes can be really hard because we're humans and we have opinions and we definitely have a view on what the story is, but we are just providing information so the viewer can make their own decision. So for you guys, has there ever been an instance where it's been really hard, or how do you, even for maybe people listening and joining our conversation who are worried about that or how to deal with the situation, what's your advice? How has it been for you guys?
I think, it's not even touching on any of the stories we've covered, but, every day I wear this necklace. It's just a little cross. And, I wear it when I'm on air, everything like that. And one time, one of my managers at one of my previous stations said, "Hey, I don't think you should wear that." And I said, "Why? What is offensive about this?" And that manager said, "Not everybody agrees with your religious beliefs." And I looked at that manager and I said, "I'm not trying to offend anyone, but this is how I present myself. I'm not taking off my necklace because somebody doesn't believe in God. That's not my vibe." And I said, "If that's an issue, I can go talk to HR, but I'm not taking this off. And sure enough, that manager, just let it go. But it's little things like that. Like, I wouldn't say you can't necessarily just be your full authentic self all the time, but this is something that makes me feel like my full authentic self. And for somebody to try to tell me that I couldn't wear it because I'm on the TV for about 15 seconds every day, oh, I was very, very upset about that.
Yeah, and I guess from like a producer standpoint, I'll probably get in trouble for this if any of my bosses listen to this, but I don't care. We're being real. I do this little thing where, say we're covering a story where there's a fire and a family gets out and nobody's hurt, or something of that nature, or a family member's been found after being missing, all this stuff, and they're like, just praise God, like God really did this for me, like God's the best. I will always put in that soundbite in my show. That's one way that I like finesse God into my daily life, like with work and stuff like that. So that's one way. And then also, Danielle, you touched on it earlier about being able to, meet people and bring them closer to God through this. And that was something that I really, really prayed about before I came to Tampa. Because I'm like, God, I know you're calling me to Tampa. I know I'm meant to be in Tampa. But how am I going to be able to show you and grow your kingdom through this outlet that I cannot put that in, in my word, or or like in my scripts,
Right.
And it's been amazing to see the outreach that I've been able to have just within my newsroom. Like, for instance, we have a political reporter, and one day he came up to me and he goes, I see you sharing Jesus all the time, like on your social media platforms. Like, can you just tell me more about that? Like, what is that about? Like, what is it about, following Jesus? And we literally had a sit down talk, which is so frowned upon, on like bringing religion into a newsroom, right there in the middle of a newsroom. And that was something that I reflected on, and I was like, God, you did this. You are the reason that I'm able to communicate, this aspect of my life and my well-being on. So that was really cool. And, just trying to bring the word in as much as I can, like through all of my scripts, but I would never push that on anybody via my scripts. It's just through a soundbite if they say praise God, or, God's the reason that this happened, or something like that.
Love that. What you got, Temple?
Just going along with what everyone's saying, I think we had the fortunate circumstance of the market we all started in. It was Charleston. So there are anywhere between 15 to 30 homicides a year, whereas now we're in bigger cities. Morgan's in Tampa, Amy's in New Orleans, I'm in Nashville. So just having that outlet, knowing that like God is there, God has your back, has been extremely helpful for me, because I'm reporting on anywhere between 2 to 20 murders a month. It just depends. And it's hard. Something we don't really talk about, or something people don't really view us as, are people. We are still a person, regardless if you're seeing us through a television screen. So I had a really tough, probably 2-week stint where I did about 8 murders, and it's involving husbands shooting their wives, husbands shooting their children, ex-boyfriends coming in and shooting their girlfriend, lighting her on fire. And this is something where if you don't have that religious backbone, you're really going to struggle, because we are seeing traumatizing things. They're not happening to us. And I don't want to discredit the family or take emotions away from anyone who has that role and is carrying that pain right now, but you're still seeing it. We are seeing these fires. We are seeing dead bodies. We're seeing puddles of blood. It's not something that we're shying away from. This is our job. We see it. We get the information. We relay it to you. Hopefully we keep you safe by doing that. But I think if you don't have God, or you don't have whatever your beliefs may be for that, that's really where you're going to struggle, because that's where you question it a lot of, why am I seeing this? Why did this happen? How can I make this better for the future? Which is why we're all in this industry. We've all touched on it too, because at the end of the day, we want to keep people safe. We want to make them happy, and we want to have that purposeful life. And I think just my religion, I can't speak for other people, but that's been something that's helped me get through the hard days, because I couldn't do it without it.
Absolutely. I can't even get through just my job now without my faith. And so I think this is very applicable to not only if you work in news, but in any job, like to still, I love what Amy said. She's like, I'm not going to take off my necklace. Like, you're allowed to like believe in Jesus. I did a story where they were talking about Jesus and how Jesus helped them in their situation. And I kept it in the story because they kept talking about it. It was such a big deal to them. And I had a producer tell me to take it out. And I said, no, that's not part of the story. Like, their story is to have Jesus in that. So to everyone joining, thank you guys for being open about news and what it's like, the good and why we're so passionate about it, but also the reality of, hey, if you want to know what the behind the scenes of a newscast look like, it's this. It's hard and messy. And if you're joining, whether you work in news or you work in cybersecurity or whatever it is, be true to yourself. You're going to need Jesus to get you through, sending emails and work meetings, not just if you're having to report on really hard things. Guys, thanks so much. Y'all know I love you. Thanks for being great friends on top of great coworkers. But of course, for everyone listening and for myself, thanks for being real.